Fossil fuels are heating the planet, and with every fraction of a degree that the world heats up, people and planet suffer through everything from higher seas to more extreme weather. And we're already struggling to keep up with these changes today. We know we need to stop burning fossil fuels, but how do we stop burning fossil fuels? How do we get to net zero? I'm Adam, a climate scientist with a PhD from Oxford, sharing what you need to know about climate change. And today I want to share with you what we actually need to do with the world's energy to stop global warming. It's never been clearer just how urgently we need to stop the world from heating. With 2 months to go, 2023 is already virtually certain to be the hottest year on record, and we're seeing the symptoms of this everywhere, whether that's our extreme weather or unprecedented changes in the frozen world. To stop the world heating, we need to get to net zero, where humanity's overall emissions are zero. To limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, which would keep the planet relatively safe, even for the most vulnerable people and ecosystems, we need to get to net zero incredibly quickly, by around 2050. Okay, well, that's just not gonna happen. Getting to net zero in just 27 years sounds like a massive eco-fantasy. I get that, but now the hippies over at the International Energy Agency have outlined a way to get there. The International Energy Agency sounds kinda legit. That's because they are legit. The International Energy Agency, or the IEA to their friends, is a 50-year-old intergovernmental organization that provides analysis, data, policy recommendations, and solutions on international energy. Not only do they know about the world's energy system, they get listened to by the world's energy system. And so if they're saying, here's how we get to net zero by 2050, we should probably hear what they have to say. Okay, so how are they saying we get to net zero by 2050? Well, top of the list is stop using fossil fuels. I mean, duh, that's hardly breaking news. Well, yeah, but tell that to the world's governments, because, for example, the IEA is saying that right now we need 0 new oil and gas fields and no new coal mines or normal coal plants. And I mean, we don't just need to stop new fossil fuel stuff, we also need to stop the old fossil fuel stuff. So fossil fuel use needs to drop to just 1/5 of today's value by 2050. Okay, so we stop burning fossil fuels. You've said that like 1,000,000 times before, but how do we actually do that? It sounds like a bit of a pipe dream. That's a good pun. Well, you wrote it. Yes, and it's good. But anyway, it's no pipe dream. It's actually grounded in reality. In a 2021 report, the IEA said we already had the tech to get us half the way to net zero. But today, just 2 years later, we've got the tech for 2/3 of the job of getting us to net zero. And by the way, the other third isn't some kind of magical energy pixie dust. It is stuff currently under development. So it's definitely not the tech that's holding us back from achieving net zero. Okay, so what are the steps we should be taking? What should we be prioritizing to get our net zero journey underway? Well, let's talk about the next few years, up until the end of the decade. Well, a whopping 80% of the emissions cuts we need for 2030 can come from just 4 things. Renewables, we need to triple them. Energy efficiency, making everything from our fuels to our aircon work better. Methane, we need to slash 3/4 of the leaks of this powerful greenhouse gas from fossil fuel production, which, by the way, would be incredible bang for the buck at slowing global warming. And electrification, making things that normally run on fossil fuels run on electricity. We're talking stuff like heat pumps and electric vehicles. And we are already taking steps in the right direction today. But we need to turn these steps into a sprint ASAP, and we need to keep that sprint up until 2050. So what would 2050 look like? Well, it looks like a lot of renewables. 90% of power generation from renewables, to be precise. 90%? But solar and wind only work when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. Oh my god, that is completely new information that I'm sure the International Energy Agency completely forgot. You should write them a strongly worded email as soon as possible. To whom it may concern. I was being sarcastic. Please do not write to the IEA. Absolutely, renewables don't run all the time, but they are incredibly cheap and quick to build, and that's why they're such a big piece of the puzzle. But you are right, that does mean we need other things to balance out our energy systems. Stuff like battery storage, bigger and smarter energy grids, fossil fuels with carbon capture, hydrogen, and nuclear. All of these play important parts in the IEA's roadmap. Okay, but 90% still sounds like a lot from renewables. Sure, but it is important to point out that the IEA haven't exactly been renewables' biggest cheerleaders over the years. For solar, for example, their predictions have time and time again fallen kind of hilariously short of what's actually happened. Okay, but still, electricity is just one part of our energy system. How are we getting the rest to net zero? Well, in lots of ways, electricity is the easy bit. For shipping and flying and the production of iron and cement, it's tough to move away from fossil fuels with the tools we've got today. So we need to work on new tech, make these sectors more efficient, and try to use them less. These are big changes to our world. Well, really, our world is changing one way or another. It's a choice between climate change or the kinds of structural changes this report lays out. But there are huge positives to stopping climate change, beyond just stopping climate change. For example, we're looking at saving millions of people from dying from polluted air. But it's not all good news. For example, there are some minerals that are critical to the energy transition, stuff like cobalt, lithium, and nickel, and we need to make sure we have enough of these materials and that we get hold of them in ways that don't hurt people or the planet. There are just so many pieces to the puzzle. I mean, what happens if we don't do all this? If we can't get all these parts of the energy transition in place, that means our only option for limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees C would be loads of negative emissions, effectively sucking huge amounts of carbon dioxide out the atmosphere. And, well, that would be super expensive if we could do it at all. So, are we on track? Wait, never mind, I know the answer to that one. How not on track are we? Well, the world has set the target for 1.5 degrees in the Paris Climate Agreement, but despite every country in the world, besides the Vatican, signing up for the Paris Climate Agreement, emissions from energy last year were higher than they've ever been. But we are making progress, and it looks like emissions could be peaking soon. It's definitely not enough progress though, and almost all countries need to shift their net zero targets earlier, as well as do more to actually achieve those net zero targets. Okay, but is it possible for us to get on track? Well, that is the million gigawatt question. This blueprint ultimately isn't telling us about the political and social changes that we'd need to make all this happen. It's about the energy systems themselves. And many argue that we need to fundamentally rethink the social and the political to decarbonize. For example, through degrowth, where we separate our ideas of how societies are meaningfully progressing from traditional measures of economic growth. It's also important to talk about what the report doesn't talk about. It's all about energy, but how we use the world's land, for example, for farming, also has big impacts on the world's climate and also needs to reach net zero. And so I guess I'm gonna have to make a video all about that pretty soon. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that, and while you're clicking on things, maybe hit me up with a like or a comment. And of course, everything I've been talking about here is global, but what this looks like in practice depends so much on the specifics of each and every country. Stuff like how much money that country has, how much sun, how much wind, how industrial that country is. But I guess what unites all countries is that everywhere needs to be doing everything it can at the same time and incredibly quickly. And that's kind of the crux of all of this. As the report puts it, there is no low international cooperation route to limiting warming to 1.5 degrees C, and no slow route either. So we need to work together, and we need to work fast. Speaking of working together, I teamed up with one of my favorite science communicators to explain how changing our climate could change the world of disease too. You can check out that video over here. Okay, until next time, bye. Yeah,